Good evening. It's Thursday, the 29th of May, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Indonesia visit. French President Macron arrives in Yogyakarta to strengthen defense ties with Indonesia amidst growing regional cooperation. Trade clash. US court blocked Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, citing presidential overreach in major legal setback. Senior visits. Actress Derana brings miniature horses to visit seniors, spreading joy and comfort through animal therapy.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again. French President Emmanuel Macron visited Yogyakarta, welcomed by Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. The leaders discussed a new defense pact highlighting cooperation on military and defense pact and equipment and technology transfers as Macron continues his Southeast Asian tour within stops in Vietnam, Indonesia and Singapore.
French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, where he was warmly received by Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. The visit marked a significant moment in strengthening bilateral ties between the two nations, particularly in the area of defense cooperation. After a formal welcome, both leaders boarded a helicopter and flew together to a military academy in the region, symbolizing their shared commitment to building strategic and defense partnerships. During a joint press conference, President Macron announced that France and Indonesia had signed a preliminary defense pact aimed at deepening military collaboration. The agreement opens the door for Indonesia to potentially procure advanced French military equipment, including Rafale fighter jets and Scorpion-class submarines. President Prabowo highlighted the importance of the partnership, describing France as one of Indonesia's most trusted allies in its effort to modernize and strengthen its armed forces. He noted that the pact also includes provisions for joint production and technology transfer, supporting Indonesia's goal of enhancing its domestic defense industry. Macron's stop in Indonesia is part of a broader Southeast Asia tour focused on expanding France's presence and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region. Having previously visited Vietnam, the French president is expected to continue on to Singapore as he works to build new diplomatic and strategic alliances in one of the world's most dynamic geopolitical landscapes.
Chaos erupted in Gaza as crowds broke into a UN aid warehouse amidst growing famine fears. The incident highlights deep tensions over aid distribution, with the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation clashing with UN over access methods and neutrality.
Large crowds of people on Wednesday broke into a United Nations aid warehouse in Gaza, the Palestinian enclave now on the brink of famine. The World Food Programme said initial reports were that 2 people had died and several more were injured. It was not immediately clear how the deaths and injuries had occurred. The war in Gaza was triggered after Hamas-led Islamist militants stormed Israeli communities in October 2023, killing about 1,200 people, according to Israeli tallies. Since then, Israel's military campaign has killed more than 53,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza health authorities, and displaced nearly all residents from their homes. Under mounting international pressure, Israel lifted a months-long aid blockade on Gaza on May 19th. Since then, it has allowed a limited number of relief to be delivered either through the United Nations or the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, which began deliveries this week. However, Israel ultimately wants the UN to work through the GHF, which is using private US security and logistics companies to transport aid into Gaza for distribution by civilian teams at so-called secure distribution sites, like the one that was broken into on Wednesday. Aid officials say families at these sites will be screened for involvement with Hamas militants, potentially using facial recognition or biometric technology. The UN and other international aid groups have refused to work with the GHF. They say the private company's aid distribution plans are insufficient for reaching Gazans, and that the scheme is not neutral. Slovenia's UN ambassador said on Wednesday that some members of the 15-member Security Council are working on a draft resolution to demand unimpeded aid access. Meanwhile, the UN ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, told it was, quote, sad and disgusting that the UN and other groups would not work with the GHF. He described the foundation's aid distribution as, quote, effective so far. The GHF says that across 2 sites currently open, it has so far given out the equivalent of nearly 850,000 meals. The foundation said it is working to open 4 sites and expand further in Gaza in the weeks ahead.
Russia has proposed a second round of peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul, aiming to resolve the ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, US President Trump voiced skepticism over Putin's intentions, delaying new sanctions as he awaits clarity over Russia's sincerity.
Moscow has proposed holding another round of direct talks with Kyiv. The meeting, which would again take place in Istanbul, is slated for June 2nd, with the aim of achieving a sustainable peace settlement.
The Russian side, as agreed, has promptly developed a relevant memorandum which sets out our position on all aspects of reliably overcoming the root causes of the crisis. Our delegation, led by Vladimir Medinsky, is ready to present this memorandum to the Ukrainian delegation and to provide necessary clarifications during the second round of direct talks in Istanbul next Monday, June 2nd.
However, there was no immediate response from Ukraine. The proposed talks come as their previous meeting on May 16th in Istanbul ended without an agreement on a ceasefire. Russia's top envoy Sergei Lavrov expressed hope that those interested in the success of the peace process will support holding a new round of Russia-Ukraine negotiations in Istanbul. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that he doesn't want to impose any new sanctions on Russia yet, as he does not want such penalties to interfere with getting a ceasefire. When asked by a reporter if he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin is sincere about ending the war, Trump said he'll know in about 2 weeks.
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
The U.S. president also said Putin may be intentionally delaying ceasefire negotiations while expressing his disappointment over recent Russian strikes in Ukraine.
South Korea's central bank has cut its key interest rate to 2.5% amidst mounting economic concerns. The move follows weaker than expected growth and global trade uncertainty as the Bank of Korea lowers its full-year economic outlook to 0.8%.
South Korea's central bank has slashed its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points as widely expected, bringing it down to 2.5%. In its fourth Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year, the Bank of Korea on Thursday announced a rate cut after leaving rates unchanged in January and in April and lowering them in February. The decision comes amid growing economic uncertainty from U.S. tariff policies, as well as the stabilization of the $1 exchange rate. South Korea's economy already contracted in the first quarter, shrinking by 0.25%, a sharp downturn from the central bank's February forecast of 0.2% growth. The Bank of Korea also revised down its economic growth projection for the year from 1.5% to 0.8%.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. And welcome back. A U.S. federal trade court has halted most of President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, ruling he's exceeded authority. The administration quickly filed an appeal, setting up a legal clash over the controversial trade measures and executive power.
This is our great.
A U.S. federal trade court has blocked President Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs from going into effect. Wednesday's ruling from the Manhattan-based Court of International Trade said the president had overreached his authority. The court said Congress is empowered by the Constitution to regulate international commerce, and the president's use of emergency powers does not override that power. The Trump administration appealed the ruling within minutes. Trump had claimed broad authority in order to impose his tariffs in April. He cited an emergency powers law the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to set 10% duties on all imports. Countries with the highest US trade deficits saw even higher rates, particularly China. The law has historically been used for sanctions against Washington's enemies, but Trump is the first US president to use it to impose tariffs, as he had argued the trade deficit was a national emergency. A 3-judge panel disagreed in Wednesday's ruling, saying, "The court does not pass upon the wisdom or likely effectiveness of the president's use of tariffs as leverage. That use is impermissible not because it is unwise or ineffective, but because federal law does not allow it." That ruling came after a pair of lawsuits. One was filed by the nonpartisan Liberty Justice Center on behalf of 5 small US businesses. They ranged from a wine and spirits importer to a maker of musical instruments, all importing goods targeted by tariffs. The other lawsuit was brought by the Democratic Attorneys General of 13 US states. The White House and lawyers for groups that sued did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Stephen Miller, a White House deputy chief of staff and leading Trump advisor, said in a brief social media post, quote, "The judicial coup is out of control." Trump has said his tariffs are intended to restore US manufacturing, but suspending, delaying, or raising them since his tariff decisions have sent shockwaves and uncertainty through financial markets. At least 5 other legal challenges to the tariffs are pending.
Elon Musk is stepping down from his role in the Trump administration after a contentious tenure focused on government restructuring. A White House official confirmed the departure, marking the end of the Tesla CEO's controversial involvement in the federal policy efforts.
Elon Musk is leaving his role in government. A White House official confirmed the move late Wednesday, saying the billionaire's offboarding would begin the same night. The exit caps a tumultuous period since U.S. President Donald Trump returned to power, vowing to give Musk a big job.
And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
Musk set out to slash government spending, saying in March he could cut at least $1 trillion off federal expenditures.
If we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt.
But DOGE attracted huge controversy, with critics saying it was making indiscriminate cuts that threatened vital services without even delivering the promised savings. Many were also angered by the resulting wave of job losses, with some 260,000 roles cut from the federal workforce. The controversy may also have done deep harm to some of Musk's businesses. Tesla sales have slumped in some markets, notably Europe, amid anger over his embrace of far-right politics in some countries. Some investors have also been concerned that Musk simply had too many roles and wasn't spending enough time at his various firms.
You know, they say I wear a lot of hats. It's true. Even my hat has a hat.
Among the worries Musk faces are an aging model lineup at Tesla and a series of failed launches at rocket company SpaceX. Now he says he'll devote himself to business again, and says his firms will be revived with world-changing products, including humanoid robots and robotaxis. Signs of a possible rift with Trump had been apparent in recent days. On Tuesday, Musk criticized the president's big tax bill, saying it was too expensive and undermined DOGE's efforts to trim the budget deficit. However, in a post on X, Musk thanked Trump for his time in government. He said the DOGE mission would continue and only strengthen over time.
Sudan's war has devastated critical infrastructure, leaving destroyed bridges, widespread blackouts, empty water stations, and looted hospitals. After 2 years of the conflict, the country faces a deepening humanitarian crisis as civilians struggle to rebuild amidst ongoing violence.
Destroyed bridges, blackouts, empty water stations and looted hospitals. Across Sudan, the devastating impact on infrastructure from 2 years of civil war is laid bare. The conflict between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has killed and injured tens of thousands of people. But it's also decimated the very systems on which a society is built. Sudanese authorities estimate the cost of reconstruction at hundreds of billions of dollars. In the capital Khartoum, residents endure weeks-long power outages, unclean water, and overcrowded hospitals. A spokesperson for Khartoum State said the capital's two main water stations went out of commission early in the war, as RSF soldiers looted machinery and used fuel oil to power vehicles. Those left living in Khartoum resorted to drinking water from the Nile or long-forgotten wells. That's exposed them to waterborne diseases that few hospitals are equipped to treat. Oil production has halved to 24,000 barrels per day and refining has ceased, leaving Sudan dependent on imports. Sudanese authorities estimate reconstruction needs at $300 billion for Khartoum and $700 billion for the rest of the country. That's amid what aid groups call the world's worst humanitarian crisis, in which some 13 million people have fled their homes. But after government forces retook Khartoum this year, some are starting to return to the capital. Over the past week, a rapid cholera outbreak has claimed 172 lives out of 2,729 cases, mostly in Khartoum. But there is little chance of reconstruction taking place in the short term, given continued fighting and drone attacks on infrastructure. And that's not to mention a world that is becoming more averse to foreign aid, and where the biggest donor, the United States, has slashed assistance.
Mexico will hold its first ever public elections for federal judges, including Supreme Court justices, marking a historic shift from appointments to popular vote. The move aims to boost accountability, but raises concerns about judicial independence and low voter turnout.
Mexico will hold its first ever public election for federal judges, including Supreme Court justices across the country on June 1st, marking a shift in the nation's judicial selection process. The elections will fill 881 federal judicial positions, including 9 Supreme Court justices, electoral tribunal magistrates, and district judges. The initiative stems from constitutional reform enacted in September 2024, which changed the judiciary from an appointment-based system to one determined by popular vote. Proponents, including President Claudia Sheinbaum and her predecessor, argue that electing judges will enhance accountability and reduce corruption within the judiciary. However, opponents expressed concerns that it may compromise judicial independence, making judges susceptible to political and criminal influence. Voters will receive 6 separate ballots to elect officials across various judicial levels. However, the complexity of the process means expected voter turnout below 30%.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, stranded on ISS by Boeing's Starliner issued, have recovered well after returning to Earth in March. Both have completed weeks of physical therapy, showing promising progress following their extended space missions.
U.S. astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams are making strong strides in recovery after returning to Earth from an unexpectedly extended stay aboard the International Space Station. The 2 NASA astronauts were left on the ISS after longer than initially planned due to technical issues with the Boeing Starliner capsule, which had been expected to mark a new era and U.S. spaceflight. Now back on the ground, they have emerged from weeks of physical rehabilitation and therapy, regaining strength and adjusting to Earth's gravity after months in microgravity. The delay in their return was caused by a series of malfunctions and safety concerns surrounding the Starliner, Boeing's spacecraft developed under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Originally launched as a test flight intended to prove the capsule's readiness, the mission instead underscored ongoing technical hurdles. Despite these challenges, Wilmore and Williams remained focused on their duties aboard the ISS, conducting research, maintaining the station's systems, and supporting international crew members. Since landing, the 2 astronauts have undergone a carefully managed rehabilitation process to help their bodies readapt to Earth's environment. Extended exposure to microgravity affects muscle mass, bone density, and balance, requiring astronauts to undergo extensive physical therapy upon return. NASA reports that both Wilmore and Williams are recovering well and are expected to return to full strength. The mission, while marked by delays, provided valuable data on both long-duration spaceflight and the performance of the Starliner capsule. As Boeing continues to work with NASA to resolve the spacecraft's issues, the experience of Wilmore and Williams stands as a testament to astronaut resilience and the evolving landscape of human space exploration.
Actress Derana has taken on a heartwarming new role, bringing miniature horses like Romeo to visit seniors at Thousands Oak Centre. Hannah believes animals uniquely reconnect us to nature, offering comfort and joy to elderly communities through these special visits.
These mini horses are trotting their way into the hearts of everyone they encounter. Romeo and Ziggy aren't ponies, they are adult mini horses.
You are beautiful. Can I get my kisses?
And the cowgirl behind the joy might be surprising.
Hi, this is Romeo.
It's actress Daryl Hannah.
It's great for me because no matter where I go with Romeo, people only see him. They don't even notice me, so it's fantastic.
She adopted Romeo and helped train him to work with people of all ages.
He just responded so strongly and so, he loved meeting new people. He loved all the attention, and it just seemed to be a natural fit.
Now, once a month, Daryl and horse trainer Sana Ferreira head to Senior Concerns in Thousand Oaks, California.
I think that animals have this unique ability to waken us to our intrinsic connection to the natural world, and that sort of reminds us that there's still joy and wonder to be found, even if you have physical constraints.
Martha Shapiro is the director of programs at the Senior Center and has seen the benefits the horses bring.
Is there a therapeutic aspect to this as well?
There is. Visiting animals are always very therapeutic for all of us, really.
Yeah. Majestic mini horses who are not only adorable, but therapeutic, too.
What is it about Romeo that's so magical for you?
Well, they're gentle, they're kind, and they're not boys.
A lot of people don't get to be around horses, and they are magical.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Marsha Fernando, and we leave you tonight with the visuals of Benin's circus school flipping tradition into global stage. Also, don't forget to send us your feedbacks through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076 805 7933. Stay tuned as Anuradha Vikramasinghe will join you next with the nightly business report. Thank you for watching and have a great night.